something I've always been really intrigued about is people that go into public office. You know, I'm sure people go in for all sorts of reasons, and we can get into that a little bit later as well. But how do you balance the things that you think are important at the same time you know that you're representing your constituency and the people in your districts and area, and knowing that you're never going to please everyone? How do you approach that? I mean, that's incredible.
Yeah, you know, so back when Maurice and I were in New York together, I was at law school out there, and I had a professor who actually had been in office before, and I went to meet with him and asked him, I wanted to get some advice because I was something that I thought that I might be interested in at some point in the future. And so I wanted to ask his advice about possibly running for office. And he said, so he took an appointment with me. We sat down. He said, look, if you're interested in running for office, he says, I'm going to give you some advice. Okay, so I'm like waiting for this sage advice. And he says, my advice to you is don't do it. It is a rough job. Yeah, it's a rough job. He's like, if you're lucky, only 49% of people will hate you, you know, if you're lucky. And then eventually, like, it'll cross over to 51%, you'll be done. So he's like, just don't do it. And I'm this, you know, optimistic, naive, young law student who wants to change the world. And so I kind of persist. I'm like, no, I'm really interested in this. I think I'm interested in making a difference. I want to give back to my community and that. And he says, all right, well, if you're really serious about it, I'm going to give you another piece of advice. He says, look, there are two types of elected officials. One is like a thermometer. A thermometer is just a tool that'll tell you what the temperature is in the room. He's like, if you're going to make the sacrifices to go into public service, don't be a thermometer. You know, anybody can tell you what the temperature is in the room. And we all know politicians who will, you know, if the public mood is one thing, they'll reflect it back to you and they'll throw gas on the flames and just inflame tensions for their own personal benefit. And he's like, it's not a job that's worth it for that if that's all you're doing. He says there's another type of public official, and that is a thermostat. A thermostat will change the temperature in the room. If I walk over there across the room and set the temperature to 72 degrees, it'll become 72 degrees. He says, if you're going to make the sacrifices, be a thermostat. Do something good, stand for what you believe in, and then work to make it happen, you know? And, you know, honestly, being a representative, there's a fair bit of listening to the people you represent and being a voice for them and understanding what they want. But there's also a fair bit of them listening to maybe the minority, those who aren't the loudest voices, and trying to balance between those two and figure out what is the right direction to set for our community, for our state, for our country, and then moving ahead to do that. And when you do that, it's, you know, it puts you in some difficult situations. It can be controversial. And at the end of the day, you might lose an election, but it's important to do what's right. And he said, you know, you need to do what's right. You need to have values and integrity that you stand for. And if you do that, then it's worth it.
Well, it's interesting you say that. I did some research. I was just watching some of the videos about you, some of the news things and that type of stuff. To take your analogy and stretch it out a little bit further, it almost sounds like as a thermostat, you're setting the temperature based on different factors. There's going to be people that are still freezing. There's going to be people that think it's too hot. But I think one thing that I saw in your career that kind of kept rising to the surface is, and you talked about the, like, you know, the minority population, that type of thing, is you found creative ways to go out of your way to help those people as well. So like with the analogy, okay, we can't change the temperature, but I can give you a blanket, or, you know, or I can give you something to help cool you off.